Give me all of them cut. All right, well, looks like we've got pretty much everyone on here, so let's go ahead and get started. How's the week been going? How do you guys feel about everything? You feel a little overwhelmed? You got a lot of information. Where are we all at?
I would say a lot of information, but it's been good information. I don't feel overwhelmed with it. I feel like I've been learning a lot.
Awesome. Good. Good. That's great news. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else? How do we feel about this week so far?
I'm kind of in the same boat. It's a lot of information, but it's super good information. So I don't feel like my head's all over the place because it's all focused on one thing, and that's getting us business. So
awesome. Love it. Good deal.
I feel like it's really good information. I do feel like the days are very long, but I also feel like that's comes with the territory just to kind of like crank it out. And I'd rather it be 1 week than 2. So
totally. Yeah, some market centers do an hour a day for 60 days. So it's like 8 weeks long. But geez, I want to get you into production. So got to get you into production a hair quicker than that. So you guys can start writing contracts and making some money. Awesome. Okay. Well, I appreciate you all participating this week. I know it is kind of a long week. Gets a little bit crazy, but hopefully you find that it's worth it and, you know, it's been helpful for you. How about, can we go over a little bit of how you guys have done with your contacts? Like who has reached out to their database? Who's reached out to people that they already know? And how have those conversations gone?
I don't have a huge database. I don't know a lot of people. I have never been a social person. So I've just kind of been reaching out to my family, seeing if they have anybody that they know, if their friends have anybody that they know. Just kind of been going from there. Haven't got a whole lot of feedback from anyone yet, but I'm just kind of starting there and starting small and slow.
Awesome. Love it. Nice job. Yeah, it can still be a challenge. Even those people that are close to us, it can be a challenge to reach out and talk to them about real estate. So I'm glad you're taking that opportunity to do it. I mean, when I say it's a challenge, I don't want to make it seem like it's hard. It's actually not super hard. Like most of them want to talk to us and, you know, want to be helpful for us. So, you know, hopefully it's not too hard, but I know there's a lot of block there, a lot of things that say, maybe I shouldn't call them and bother them, but awesome. I'm glad you pushed through and do it anyways. Love that. Who else has had some conversations with their database? How has that gone? What's gone well? What's not gone so well?
I've had conversations with my database this week, and I actually find it easier than doing the robocalls. I'm still like trying to figure out Mojo still a little bit. But it's really hard for me to like pick that up and actually like want to make those calls because I'm like, some stranger's gonna yell at me.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just think it's easier. And I always start off with like small talk. And most people know I went into real estate anyways. So they ask me how real estate's going before I even have to bring it up.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, that is one of those tricks. I mean, there's different ways you can reach out to people, but one of the tricks is if you ask them what they're doing for work or how their work is going, people typically will reciprocate and they'll ask you the same thing. So that is one way to kind of bring up real estate, is by asking them about their work and how that's going. So love that. And you can also go the flip, like we've kind of talked about, where you can go in and say you're calling for work, then you can ask them for referrals or find out who they know that's looking to make a move soon. And then you can go into that kind of small talk and just kind of touching base with them as well. So love it. You can kind of use that, whatever works best for you, or maybe switch it up. Any other comments? Like I do want to get you comfortable talking to people that you already know. So is there anyone who wanted to call people they knew but didn't feel comfortable, didn't know what they were going to say to them?
Well, absolutely. I wanted to call all sorts of people I knew, and I thought, but they already know that I'm doing it on Facebook. I'm getting all these like, you know, people are like, way to go. We're so excited for you, very, very positive. But
Yeah.
I've kind of experienced the same thing though. Like once you make that call and just, again, we talked about this morning a little bit, Nick, on the accountability call, but it really hit me today. This is honestly not about me. Real estate is so big. It's such a big deal. It's such a big move for people. It's, taking out a home loan is a huge deal. Building a house is a mega deal. I mean, selling their home that they love, that they've raised their children in, it's huge. So it occurred to me that this is not about me. This is about them. And how can I love them? How can I bring light into their lives? How can I offer them education, information, hope? It really hit me. And once that, for me, I mean, again, this is just Alicia on her soapbox, I'm so sorry. But once that thought came, my ability to no longer be afraid, or it like that bravery came with it. You know what I mean? It was like, this isn't about me though. I can call and show love to someone else and concern and care about my SOI because I do care about them. I can show that love and inspire them and help them. And I can do that because it's not about me. It's about them and how the fact that they matter in this world, in this life. And, let's be honest here. I have teenagers, so I'm older than a lot of you. I have teenagers and I watch how they get kicked around and I watch how hard things are. And people's personal lives are hard. And the older you get, the more you know, people really they need those in their lives that genuinely care about them and want to bring light to them. So once that, I don't know if that helps anybody else, but once that came to my heart, I was like, you know what? I can be fearless because I am here to help them. I'm here to love them, teach them what they need to know so that they can have a successful life and a successful experience in real estate. This is no longer about Alicia and how much commission I'm going to get. What does that 3% line look like? This is about them. And for me, that has made a huge difference in terms of, courage, because it was scary. Does that make sense? Off my soapbox. I promise I will not comment for the rest of the day. I'm done. But there you go.
No, I love that. I really appreciate you sharing that. It is kind of a journey of just kind of figuring out kind of where you fit and making it all make sense. I love that you shared that. I love that you shared that you were afraid of it at first, but then you really have found out that you can be of value to those people. So yeah, it really is. You gotta, once you figure out that it's about them and it's no longer about you, I think that's where it can kind of turn. That's where we can really show our value and really do amazing things. So I love that. Thanks for sharing it. Anyone else? Has anyone else had a struggle about calling their database or calling people that they already knew that, that we could help you with the script or maybe find some way to overcome that? All right. Well, I do want to get you in the habit of contacting people every day as we do our business plans and as we, work together to achieve your goals. One of the things that's probably not going to change is in those business plans is you really need to have a certain amount of people that you're contacting every single day. That's the habit. That's the one thing that is going to build your business. So a lot of times we'll add social media on there. We will add farming or, we'll add these different pillars of business in there. But the one thing that's really not going to change, it might change who you're going to talk to, but the one thing that's not going to change is the thing that's going to help your business grow and help you have a sustainable business is contacting people every single day. So just get in the habit of it. Stay in contact with me. If you ever have a block, you say, hey, I really know I should call these people, but I don't feel good about it. Call me. We'll talk through it. We'll figure out a way that you can feel good about it and make those calls because, it's just all about making conversation with people about real estate. That's kind of the name of the game. The one who has the most conversations with property owners in the local area is the one who owns the market. Okay. Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and shift gears. Thank you, Alicia, for taking us to church. I feel like we got a little church in there. So I appreciate you kind of
Thank you.
spreading the good word and the positivity. I love that. So thanks a lot. Let's go ahead and switch gears. So today we're going to talk about something that is very going to be really important for your career. So it's a very much an actual tactical thing that we have to do, and nuts and bolts sort of thing. But we're going to talk about actually writing offers. So this is very much, and we've already talked about how we can get leads, how we can convert those to appointments, and then we talked about how we can get the buyer broker signed. And now we're actually going to go show them homes. We're going to write an offer. We're going to send it in. So we're going to be talking a little bit more on the buyer side, but realize that at the same time, every buyer has a seller on the other side of the transaction. So we're also going to be representing a lot of sellers, hopefully a lot of sellers in this market, because it's a lot easier that way. But at any rate, we're going to go through writing offers. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go through some really just nuts and bolts sort of basic things that you're going to want to know. I would recommend taking some notes, and let's jump into it. Okay, so let's back up just one step. Well, actually, we can start here just because this is actually where this is actually a house that I've got a client that's going to look at this home right now, actually. So, okay, let's start. I showed you a lot of the MLS yesterday. I feel like I showed you how to send out properties to your clients, right? How to send all the available properties. I showed you how to set up a listing alert, so that way your clients are going to be receiving all the new listings as soon as they're available. Did everyone feel good about that? Did that kind of make sense the way that works? Pretty simple. Anyone who felt like that was complicated or didn't understand it? Okay. Awesome. Well, let's go to the next step. So let's say we sent them a property, whether it was the automated one or the list we sent. They said, hey, I want to see this property. Now, how are they going to say that? They're probably going to say it however you tell them. So when you're in that buyer consultation, I'm typically going to tell them, hey, when you see a home that you really want to go see, I need you to text me about it. That's what's usually easiest for me. If it's a married couple, I will typically I'll start a group text with them. That way, whenever they send me a property, we'll all see it. We can talk about it. Makes it really easy. That makes it so there's less miscommunication there. And then when they get a property, it's really easy for them to share them with you and say, hey, I really want to go see this home. So let's see that they did that. As one of my clients did. They sent me this property, said, hey, I want to go see this. Can I go take a look? And I said, sure. Of course, she wanted to see it today at 10 a.m. And I said, hey, I've got to teach a class at 10 a.m. But I'm going to send someone to go help you with it. And I was able to find someone. So, which normally you are, especially if you have a little lead time, but normally you are. So there's my little plug for leverage. And, let's say that I had a date with my wife today at 10 a.m., which would be kind of weird. But let's say I had something that I cared about at 10 a.m., like a date with my wife, and someone said they want to see this house at 10, and I said, oh, it's okay, I'll just cancel my other plans or whatever. I just think we have to respect ourselves and our lives, be willing to leverage a little bit, let someone else go show the house. It'll be fine. They'll do a great job. Your client will still love you. Make sure that I don't like it when people cancel their vacation plans, their date night plans, whatever they're going to do. Live your life. There's a lot of us here. We can all help you and help you live a life that you want. It's not all about making a bunch of money, although we really like to make a lot of money here. Don't get me wrong. But it's also about living this life that most of us strive for, which is we want to be able to do things on our own terms. We want to be able to enjoy it a little bit. Awesome. Hey, I've been an agent for 3 years. I already know the topic you're speaking on. Okay, awesome. Good deal, Tracy. Sounds good. Okay, so anyways, that's my little soapbox for, don't let your clients change all your plans. Go have fun, go live your life. If you need help leveraging, let me know and I will get you some resources. I like to have a lot of fun. I like to sell a lot of houses. So I like to do both. Anyways, okay, back to this. Okay, my client says, hey, they want to go see this house. I said, great, I'll set it up. Let's go take a look. Okay, let's go in. As you can kind of see from this MLS listing, down at the bottom, there's the bright orange schedule a showing button. This is the showing time button. So I'm going to click that. When you click the schedule a showing button, it's going to say, okay, how do you like to be communicated with showing time? And I do email and text. And then agree to the terms. And now I can either schedule a single showing or I can add it to a showing cart. Scheduling a single showing is just for one. The showing cart is where you can add multiple properties and then you can go see them all at once. Okay, it's pretty slick once you get in there. So I'm just going to do schedule a single showing. And I've already got an appointment at 10, as you can see. But let's say I wanted to show a different client at 11:30. You can kind of see, so these blacked out areas, those ones are not available. So they're just not allowing showings. They're not doing showings Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, or in the morning or in the afternoon. They're doing some in the morning and some in the evening. Okay, this is pretty typical right now. We'll kind of time block it for our sellers so they don't have to be gone for a whole, for a whole week at a time.
Hey, Nick,
Oh, yeah.
is there something supposed to be showing on the screen when you push that? Because when you,
Mm,
I don't see
yeah.
anything but the actual MLS page. There's not like a time frame of the schedule.
Thank you for letting me know. Yes, I think it's because it pops up in a different window. Now can you see it?
Yes, thanks.
Okay, thank you for telling me that. Otherwise, everyone would think I was crazy, although they might anyways. Okay, so when we pull this up, yeah, when you click on schedule a single showing, then you can just come in here, you can click on, say, 11:30. It'll say, okay, I'll schedule the showing at 11:30. How long do you want it to be? Do you want 15 or 30 minutes? You can put the buyer's name, but normally you wouldn't, and then you just hit request appointment. Okay, and then it'll either text or email you depending on which options you chose when you clicked on it. So anyways, very simple stuff, nothing too crazy. Go schedule a showing and then go take a look at the house. Now, once that showing is confirmed, which I should actually, I'm going to show you only because I know I just had one confirmed because I just scheduled one on that house. It'll send you an email. It'll also send you a text saying that it was confirmed. So I get this email, it says showing confirmed. Always make sure that you look at it, make sure it's the right property, make sure you got the time correct. And then if you come down here where it says Supra iBox, that means that's how you're going to access the home is with your Supra key. And sometimes on here, you'll see what they call a CBS code. A CBS code just means there's an extra access code that you have to have. So when you actually go to use the key box, this one actually doesn't have one. But a lot of times it'll say CBS, which stands for call before showing. It just means you have to have an appointment to show it. So then it'll give you what that code is right here. And then when you go to put it in the box, you'll just type in your normal 4-digit code that you have to put into the Supra. And then you'll type in the 7-digit code that they give you here. Okay, that's just a little more secure. I will say I use the CBS codes just because I've had people show up at my clients' homes before and cause a lot of grief because they walk in on them and, it can get to be a problem. So anyways, that's kind of how you schedule the showing. Fairly simple. If they don't have this orange thing, then you're just going to go down and click. If it doesn't say schedule a showing like this, then that means they're not using showing time. Just go down, see if there's any instructions, like in the showing instructions or anything, agent remarks. If there's nothing, then you'll just click on the agent's name. At least this is how I do it. I click on the agent's name, I steal their mobile number, and then I'll just text them. So then you'll just copy that, and then I will go in here and I will text them, and I'll say, I'll just text them and I'll say, hi, can I show blank at blank today? Whatever, you just kind of fill it out, right? And then they'll text you back. So I won't beat that to death. Just want to let you know that's kind of how you'll schedule the showing. Very simple. Don't call them. They won't answer more than likely right now in today's market. So showing time or text, okay? Awesome. Now let's say we've gone to show it. Now, I'm not going to go way into eKey, but if you don't have your Supra eKey access, let us know. We will help you get that. You just have to take the code of ethics class. If you've not taken that yet, let us know. We can get you coordinated with that, and then we'll get you your e-key so that you can actually start showing homes. But I know a lot of you are very newly licensed, so you probably don't have that yet. So just hang on, we'll get that taken care of. All right. Okay, let's say we go show it. We're actually going to use that Supra. We're going to get access. When you walk through the house, I'm just going to give you a couple quick tips on kind of what that'll look like as you're actually walking through to show the home. If there's another agent there, typically right now we're waiting outside until they, until it's our turn. So a lot of times you will see a line in front of the house. That's just because of COVID and because of security and a bunch of other things. Usually we'll wait for the other agent. If they take forever, sometimes I'll try to push the things along, but you'll just wait your turn. Once you go inside, here's my main point. Make sure that you're asking a lot of questions. This is just in general, real estate or sales in general. You want to ask a lot of questions. So you're not going to go in and say, oh my gosh, that kitchen is so ugly. Oh my gosh, this thing is so pretty. Oh, you don't want to make a lot of statements. You want to ask a lot of questions. So as you go in, oh, what do you think about this area? What do you think about the kitchen? Is this kind of what you had in mind for the bathroom? You're just going to ask them a lot of questions because you want to find out, is this a good fit for them? One thing that I want to relieve you of is if you feel like you need to, one of your jobs as a realtor is to talk them into buying a certain house. I'm going to release you of that because you couldn't, even if you tried. You're not going to be able to convince them to buy a home they don't want to buy. So what you're going to do instead is ask them some questions about it. Figure out what their, you should, hopefully you've already asked enough questions that you know what their motivation is and you know what their main things are for why they even want to move in the first place. But then when you get there, make sure you ask them questions like, hey, does this seem like a good fit for what you had in mind? How does this kitchen look? What do you think? I don't like to impose a lot of my views on it. A lot of people will say, oh, I never let my clients, I'll never let you buy a house that I wouldn't myself live in, which to me is a pretty stupid thing to say. I probably shouldn't, that's probably a little mean, but it's like, I would have totally different needs than you would. I have totally different standards that you are. There's some people who would come in my house and they wouldn't live in my house because it's a mess. Or, there's probably other people's houses that are a mess that I would say, no, I think I'll skip out on that one. So we're all different. I think it's really about that client. So make sure that you know what's going to work for them. I do like to know, are they handy? Are they able to remodel some stuff themselves? A couple other things. The only things that I'll really sell my clients on are there's some small things that they can do to make the house a lot better that they may not know about or may not understand. And so those kind of things, like when I walk into a house and it's got really ugly paint and really ugly carpet, that's a really good thing because a lot of buyers, they're not going to be able to see past the gross carpets or the paint. And so some of those things, that's where I'll kind of add value. I'll be like, hey, the cool thing is some people are going to be turned off by this, but for you, you know that carpet and paint are cheap. Like those are very inexpensive upgrades that you can do to make this home better for you. So, in a lot of ways, we like to help our clients buy ugly houses in that fact because they're easy to make them look pretty easily. So anyways, those are kind of my main things about showing a home, but ultimately it's just walking through, letting them take a look and deciding if it's the right thing for them. Now, by the end of that showing, you'll probably have a pretty good idea if they're interested in it or not. You'll probably have a pretty good idea, but you will want to ask questions like, hey, what do you think about this one? Do you want to move forward on this one? You already would have educated them on the market, so they know things are going quick. They know that if it's active now, if it's active today, it's probably going to be under contract tomorrow. So they kind of know what they're getting into. And now it's just a matter of helping them decide, do they want to move forward on this one or not? And do they want to put an offer in? So after it's all done, you say, hey, do we want to pursue this one? Or what do you think? And if they say, yeah, I think we would want to pursue this, then you're going to make an offer. Now, you don't want to make sure that they're not giving up any info when they're in the home. So in today's age, we have video, microphones, all sort of, like, I don't have kids, so I just see all the little devices like the monitors and stuff, and I know they're all hooked up to Wi-Fi and hooked up to people's phones and stuff. So you have to be really careful. You have to be really careful not to give up your client's position when you're in the home, because people will probably see that. You also don't want to criticize the house while you're in there. If it's their, the house they've lived in for 20 years, if they hear you talking badly about something that they've done or something like that, it could affect your ability to get that house under contract. You could offend them. So I just have to be a little bit careful about that. Tell your clients, hey, let's not talk about it in the house. We'll go outside and then we'll go through everything, because people can kind of follow you around a little bit in that way with the way that technology is. So just be aware of that. But otherwise, once you leave, you're going to say, hey, do we want to put an offer on that? Yes. Okay, perfect. Now, one thing that's going to save you a lot of headache is, I'm going to tell you this: you are not going to write the contract with your client. So when I was brand new, I had no idea what I was doing. Back then, we didn't have coaches, mentors, anything like that. And I walked uphill both ways in the snow. It was horrible. And I didn't really have anyone to help me. So I literally showed a house. I wanted to write an offer. So I brought my client to the office. I grabbed the broker and I said, hey, will you help me write an offer? And it took us 3 hours, huddled around a computer. It was not a smooth experience for the client. It was not impressive. It was a mess. Luckily, he was a friend of mine and it worked out okay. But yeah, I would not recommend that. So instead, what we're going to do, you leave this house, they say they do want to, they do want to take a stab at it. Say, great, I'm going to get an offer put together for you and I'll call you with some details in just a bit. That's all you have to say. If you're pretty confident writing offers, then you're going to go in after today. You'll probably feel better about it. Then you can go start putting together an offer. And then honestly, before you submit your first offer, and maybe even before you have that conversation with your client where you have them sign, go ahead and call me and say, hey, we want to put in an offer. Will you just double check it? Will you make sure that it's right? You may not feel 100% confident writing it yourself. I want to be there for you. I'll make sure that everything looks okay. So just tell them, hey, I'm going to go put together an offer. I will call you in a couple hours. And then you'll call them once you have it all buttoned up, all looking good. Then you can go in there with complete confidence. So it's all about preparation. Give yourself a little space. Say, hey, I'll call you later. That's the way to go. Okay. Don't show up at the office with your client. It will not be a good experience. Okay, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to say, okay, we want to write an offer. You're going to get back to your office or your home or whatever. You want to put an offer on this property. So let's go ahead and do do a couple things. The first thing is you're going to want to check on pricing. Now, I know we talked a lot about pricing yesterday not yesterday, but maybe yesterday. I can't remember. But when we did CMAs, I think it was 2 days ago. When we go into pricing, it's just, 2 days ago. When we talk about pricing from a seller perspective, it's a little bit different than from the buyer perspective. Not a lot different, but here's what we want to do. We want to find out, how much is this home actually worth? So we're not going to offer on the home. The price that we put down is not going to really have to do with the list price at all. In my opinion, the list price is basically like, do any of you guys have an idea of how the list price got there? Like, why is this house listed at $399,990?
Doesn't that have to do with the history of like marketing something below the value, or no, not below the, like the solid number? Something about the search engine, something? No?
Yeah, well, yeah, you mean why it's not a round number? Is that what you mean? Like,
yeah, just because when you put it into the search, if it comes up as less, like it's within the ballpark number or whatever for searching. But I think there was something historically too, right, to this?
Yeah, well, yeah. So, yeah, I think kind of what you're touching on is the fact of like why it's not 400,000, so something like that, which
Yeah.
I think is a good point, because this is kind of the Walmart style. If Walmart was to list a house, they probably wouldn't list it for 400,000. They'd probably list it for $399,999, because that's like the rollback price, or whatever. So there is a lot of research in retail that you want it to be just a hair under that even dollar. So I think there's probably some truth to that. And along those lines, I will tell you um, my particular strategy on it is normally I like to list at the price, and that's only because if someone puts in the MLS, which most people that are searching for a home are on the MLS because they have a real estate agent that's helping them. So when they put in their range, they're normally going to put 350 to 400, or they might put 400 to 450 or whatever. But if they put in 350 to 400, this house will pop up because this house fits between 350 and 400. If they put in 400 to 450, this house isn't going to pull up. It's $10 below that bottom threshold. So in my opinion, I like to be right on the dot. That way people searching down below it will still see it, and people searching above it will still see it. That's just the world according to Nick. If you talk to any of the Walton family, they'll tell you something different. They'll tell you that the Walmart philosophy is better, and I'd probably listen to them, to be honest. They've got a lot more money than I do. So anyways, but that's why I price it the way that I do. What I really want to get at is this price is something that the seller decided that's what I'm going to list the house for. So the agent and the seller, they got together, they said, okay, what are we going to list this house for? And they settled on $399,990. And anyways, my whole point being that's not necessarily what it's worth. That's just what they decided to list it at. So it's really important for us to go do some price research on this and figure out, okay, is that actually what it's worth, or how much is this house worth? So let's just do a mini CMA on it. Obviously, this is a Rambler with a basement. It's fully finished, 5-bed, 3-bath with a 2-car garage. Let's just run some pricing on it real quick. I'm going to go into search. Actually, I'm going to download this as a PDF first. All right, so then I'm going to go back into my search, and I'm just going to clear this out. And let's just see kind of what homes have been selling for in that area right now. So obviously the way we're going to find price, we're going to look at the most recent solds that are in that area. We're going to only look for single families in this case. View map. Going to do the radius tool just like I would with a seller. A half mile around. Going to paste in that MLS number and set criteria. It's going to give me a half mile radius, and it's automatically going to go back 1 year. That's what sold takes me all the way back 12 months. So I'm going to tighten that up to about 3 months. And we've got 25 comps. Let's see what Ramblers look like. We've got 5 comps. Let's see how those look. So we've got some that sold in November and then one that sold in December. So that's kind of a bummer. We don't have a really up-to-date comp, which is kind of a bummer, but you know, we'll do the best we can with what we've got. So let's look at, say, now when we're dealing with a buyer, a lot of times we're kind of hinging on, because let's be honest, this house, it's going to get plenty of offers and it's going to sell. I just know that because that's how the market is. It's a decent house. It's under $500,000. So it's more than likely it's going to sell. And I don't think it's going to sit for very long. It's likely to get multiple offers. So anyways, looking at that, what I'm thinking is, okay, I want to make sure that I put in an offer that's aggressive enough to get the house. Or maybe I'll find out, okay, the offer that I need to put in to get the house might be more than either my clients are willing to pay or more than what we think the house is worth. And maybe they don't want to buy it, but I want them to at least have the choice, right? I want them to at least have a shot at it. So anyways, I'm going to kind of go in here and I'm going to say, okay, what's the max that these have sold for? So I'm going to show all of them, and I'm just going to go to brief report. That way it'll show me the sold price. Wow, that's a big sold price. It's going to show me the sold price right here of what these all sold for. So that's one tip, is that if you only were to look at that list price that it showed earlier, it could be a little misleading, because this one for 300 actually sold for 307. This one for 345 actually sold for 371. So you can actually see their sold prices and their list prices don't connect. This one was listed 375, sold 390. So you can see a lot of these are going a fair amount over list price, right? So that's going to help you as you're putting your offer together. So let's say out of all of these, how is it ordered? It's ordered by list price. Let's order it by sold price. Okay, so I'm going to take a stab and say 5,500 square foot round, but that one's probably not going to be really indicative of the price of the one that we're looking at that has 2,500 square feet. So we can probably count that one out. Now this one's 3,200 square feet. That one's a fair amount bigger than ours. Remember, ours is 2,500. I think that one's probably not the best comp either. Now this one, 2,600 square feet, that sounds a little bit more reasonable. So if I pull that up, 2,600 square feet, it's got a finished basement just like ours does. It's got that 2-car garage just like ours does. Let's see what the acreage looks like. This one is 0.16. Ours is 0.11, so ours is a little bit smaller. And then look at what else is going on here. Okay. So, and this one sold at 390. So this one sold at $390,000. So, and this one sold on December 31st. It scores right in 2020. Sold for $390,000. Now, what have prices done over the last 60 days since this one sold? Anyone have an idea which direction prices have gone? Up, down, around? Up. Okay, yes, sir. Awesome. Yes, prices have gone up. So, and we're kind of measuring it around 1%. I would say probably in February it's more than 1%. But let's say about 1% a month is kind of what we're seeing. We're seeing just a massive increase in home values. So let's take this one sold at 390. Let's say that we're going to call them the same, although this one does have a little bit more property. Oh, you know what this one does have? It's got 250 square feet up top. I didn't realize that. So
that's actually my house, not in Eagle Mountain though, but in Saratoga Springs.
Oh, okay. I was like, that's a little weird. I'm glad you're telling me that before I start making fun of the decorating or something.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah, so this one,
250 is a loft above the garage.
Cool. So, and maybe that's a good thing to discuss, because if you look at this one, so this square footage is pretty similar to this one. This one just doesn't have the loft upstairs. The square footage is pretty similar. And to be honest, actually main floor square footage will be weighed a little bit heavier. The main floor square footage is a little more valuable than the second floor square footage. And that's a little more valuable than the basement square footage. So just to kind of like, so if you go in order, let's say that their square footage was the exact same. I would say that this one is actually worth a hair more, just because of the fact that it's got more on the main floor, right? Rather than on the second floor, something like that. So let's say these two are pretty similar. This one's got a little less land, but at any rate, this one sold at 390. Pull up the calculator. Let's say 390,000 times, we're going to add 2% for that. So ours should be worth about 400,000. So you can see if the one that we're looking at is worth about 400,000, which we know from the comps it pretty well is. Now I know why they came up with this price, right? So they priced it very well. So they're going to price it where it's actually worth, which I think is what they did. Now, then from here, the market's going to drive that up. I can just 100% tell you this house is going to go for more than that. And so, because it's very much worth this, and it's going to sell for more than what it's worth on paper, because that's just the market that we're in. So if we want to put in an offer that's aggressive on here, we're going to have to go above. We're going to have to go over what the actual value is. It's a little bit more of an art than a science. I mean, if I had a buyer who was really, really strong, I wouldn't be afraid to go up to say 435. I wouldn't be afraid to go up to 440. Like there's a possibility it's going to go that high. But with this particular buyer, Like they're not going to be able to make up that difference in an appraisal. So let's say we get our appraisal at 400. If we offer 440, my client's going to have to come up with that $40,000 cash difference to be able to qualify for the house. They're going to have to bring their down payment plus that $40,000. And to be honest, my clients aren't going to be able to do that. You know, some clients would, if you've got, you know, clients who've had a house before or whatever, and they've got a bunch of cash in the bank for whatever reason, they might be able to do that. My clients, they probably won't. So, which is totally fine. We just have to be aware of that. So in this case, I do know that my clients have some cash. So I'm probably going to be offering like 420, something like that, because they could make up a $20,000 appraisal difference. You'll also see on this same house, other buyers, they're going to be offering something like 400, 405, 410. You know, and it's possible that this house could sell for 450. We just had one close that was listed at 400 that we closed at 450. So there's all sorts of variants. And like I said, on this one that I just sold or that I just put under contract, we had 45 offers. So think about it. There were a lot of really amazing offers that didn't get chosen either. So even if you do your very best, you're not going to be able to guarantee your clients that they're going to get this house because there's just going to be so much competition, right? That's just how the market is right now. So anyways, all that to say, let's go ahead and put our offer in. We're going to say that we're going to offer 420 on it. And in a different market, that would be crazy, right? But in this market, we're trying to be as aggressive as possible to actually lock down the house. And we could just as easily have looked it up and found out that that 400 was overpriced, and maybe we would have offered lower than that, you know? So, okay, I'm going to pop into a spot in the MLS called Forms and Forms Library right here. Forms and Forms Library. I better answer to this text really quick. Okay, so let's go to Forms Library. Now let's talk about some of the documents you're going to need to write this offer. If you don't already have a buyer broker agreement, you're going to need one right now. You can't write an offer for someone if you don't have an agency agreement with them. So I'm going to go to exclusive buyer broker agreement designated agency. Now here's the trick. You don't click on the actual thing here. You're going to click on this little green button. So and notice there, when I typed in broker, it just kind of slims this list down a little bit. And I'm choosing exclusive buyer broker agreement designated agency. That's the one that you're going to use for 99.999% of your buyers. Okay. Exclusive buyer broker agreement designated agency. You're going to click their little green plus sign to move it over. Now, one thing that the buyer broker is also including the due diligence checklist. So if you're going to sign a buyer broker agreement, you also want them to sign the buyer due diligence checklist. It's supposed to be all signed together. And not everyone knows that or follows that, but it is in the buyer broker. It says those two documents will be following it: the buyer due diligence checklist and the wire fraud alert disclosure. So whenever you sign a buyer broker agreement, you're also going to include buyer due diligence checklist and a wire fraud alert disclosure. Okay. So that's going to take care of your agency. So that's going to get agency. Now you may also already have a buyer broker with them. So when you met them in person, you did your buyer consultation. Hopefully you already have a buyer broker and you won't have to do this. But if not, make sure that you do this. And you want that to be the first thing they sign, not the last thing they sign. The next thing you're going to want is a REPC or a real estate purchase contract. Now, when you type in REPC, it's going to slim it down, but you're still going to have a lot of options. So you're going to want to go to real estate purchase contract REPC. This one right here, real estate purchase contract REPC. I'll try to zoom this in for a second. I can see everyone squinting, so I'll try. Yeah, real estate purchase contract REPC. And then other things that you're going to need, if your client is FHA or VA, we have a VA FHA addendum. Most of your clients will probably, depending on their situation, they're probably going to need at least one addendum, a blank addendum. which if you just need an extra addendum, I'll show you some of the things that would go on it, but just type in addendum to real estate purchase contract and you'll find this addendum to real estate purchase contract REPC. That's just going to give you a blank addendum. So that's just a blank addendum so you can add a few extra terms on there. Okay. So I'm going to add that as well. These are kind of your main ones that you'll need. And then if you have FHA or VA, you'll add in that FHA or VA addendum. If you have any other terms, you know, there's all sorts of weird, there's all sorts of different things. So we could go on forever about different forms that you might want to use. But in this case, let's just stick with this and let's move forward. I'm going to hit create packet right here. And that's just going to merge these all and get them in a way that we can actually fill them in. Now, I'm not going to go through every line on here because actually your broker, Rich, is going to go over that at 11. So get excited about contracts. You know, you'll be glad that you know it. It may not be the most exciting topic, but you do need it. So hopefully this is helpful. As you go through, just read, like the way that our contracts were made, they were made for realtors. So they know that we're not attorneys and they know that most of us haven't even graduated from high school. So they made it very simple for us and they labeled everything like, you know, this says, you know, what do I put in here? The company. Okay, so I'll type in KW South Valley Keller Williams. This one says, and this in here, you're going to put the buyer. So you're going to type in the buyer's name there. So it's not super high intensity. Most of them are pretty well labeled of what they are. If not, like say this one about brokerage fee. Buyer agrees to pay the company a brokerage fee in the amount of blank percent of the acquisition price of the property. So you can kind of tell that means commission, right? That's how much commission is going to get paid. That's a little bit of a totally different conversation, which Rich will go over, is that typically the buyer's not the one that actually pays for it, but truthfully, that's what the buyer broker agreement says. And in practice, normally the seller pays for it, but you know, just an interesting little thing there.
So Nick, do we fill this out and type it up before we bring it to like an appointment to meet with a buyer? Should this be all typed up and everything inputted before we get there? Or what do you think?
Yeah, I prefer that for sure. Yeah, I like to have it filled out ahead of time. That way, all you have to do is have them sign it and you don't have to go actually write it all in. You want it to be as simple as possible. So you'll just slide it, have them sign it, and you'll be done.
Okay, thanks.
Of course. Yeah. So I would fill it out. Maybe you don't know who the buyer is. Like you don't know if it's the you know, maybe they're going to have their mom sign with them, or maybe there's someone else on the loan. So it might change, but for the most part, I would fill in who the buyer is going to be and have them sign that. You can always change it later. Okay, so yeah, just make sure that when you're filling this out, just read the sentence before, read the sentence after, and you should be able to figure most of it out. And then always, like I said, I'm happy to double check these. I'd actually prefer it that way. I'd rather help you avoid getting into trouble than have to try to bail you out of trouble later. So lean on me. You're not bothering me. I want to help you. Anyways, you're going to kind of fill these out. And I'm going to show you one other quick trick that you can do that you'll want to use in when you're writing offers. There's this auto populate forms button right here. And what that does is it's going to basically autofill a lot of these spots for us. So it'll say, so it says, if you know the MLS number, you can type that in here, which I do because I already had copied it from the MLS sheet. I put the MLS number in there and then I can hit load. That's actually going to fill in a lot of these fields for me. You know, it's actually going to fill this in. And then let's go, I'm going to put a buyer's name. To avoid making it complicated, I'm going to put in Carrie. Carrie is our client here. So Carrie is our buyer, and then I'm going to be the agent. So I'm just going to fill that in here. By filling it into this auto populate forms area, it's just going to automatically fill it into all the other sections. So it just makes it easy. Seller name, let's say that the seller's name is Christy. You're the first one on my screen, so lucky Christy. So she's the seller. it's already going to fill in the agent's info. It's going to fill in a lot of the stuff, and you can change the date of the offer. That would just be today's date. Since we're writing it today, that's what would be in there. So once you've filled this out as much as you can, just hit fill and update fields. And that's going to, if you look at our sheet, it's actually filled in the buyer's name. It's filled in the agent's name. It hasn't filled in everything. You're still gonna have to put in the date and all that stuff here. But I'm sure Rich will go over it, but make sure this very first line on the buyer broker is the same as it is on the listing agreement. And this first date right here, this says when this says when the actual contract or buyer broker agreement is going to be canceled or going to expire. So you don't put today's date right here. You put the day that it's going to expire. So just a quick note there. It's the same on the right to sell agreement. You want to put the day that it expires, but it's kind of, most people will just put today's date, but that would not be a good idea. Okay.
How long do you think on that agreement?
Yeah, I would say at least 6 months for buyers and sellers. Some people would say like 2 years because your buyer may be working on getting qualified or something like that. You could do that, or you don't. It kind of, whatever you want. I'd say 6 months is the standard though.
Okay.
So, and I showed you what you're promising them. Loyalty, obedience, full disclosure, confidentiality, and reasonable care. So, for me, I don't know that I want to promise them that for 2 years, blanket forever. But some people like to have it. I'd keep it pretty short, maybe 6 months. Now, when you go to, if you click up here, you can go to next form. That's going to automatically save all of our work here on this form, but it's going to go to the next one. So the next one that we had chosen was the buyer due diligence checklist. That's already fully filled out just from our auto populate thing. So this form just goes over things that they'll want to look at when they're buying. Does everything meet the local zoning and code operations? Can it be rented? Is there hazardous waste? I mean, there's a bunch of things they should just keep in mind. So we don't have to really fill anything out on there. Just make sure the top has their name. Same with wire fraud alert. This one, for some reason, doesn't always populate correctly. So, we have to do a little bit of, filling it in. But wire fraud alert, this just says there really is a problem with wire fraud. I imagine they add this to the real estate schooling now. But there's a lot of fraud where people will pose as you and they will email your client and say, hey, go ahead. Now it's time to wire over your proceeds. Sometimes it matches to the dollar of what their down payment is supposed to be or something else. So it looks very suspicious. So it looks pretty legit. This just says they're not agreeing to, or they're not going to send any wires without a conversation first. So they're going to be very careful not to send wires unless we've talked to them on the phone, confirmed it, all that stuff. Let's go to the next form. This one should be mostly, a lot of it's going to be filled out. This is actually the purchase contract. So this is the actual purchase contract. You'll see a lot of the parties have already been added. The address has been added and the tax ID number because it's just been pulled in from the MLS. As you go in, it will ask you some things like earnest money, what inclusions or exclusions there are, purchase price. It'll go through a bunch of stuff that, like I said, Rich is going to go through all of that stuff. Okay. So Rich is going to go through a little bit more specifically how to, how you want to fill this out. But I'm going to go, I'm just going to go to the next form because I'm not that. Like I said, Rich is going to cover that in detail, so I don't want to bore you like crazy. Okay, then you've got an addendum. Like this one might be addendum number 1. And so this is addendum number 1. You're going to say that it is a, oh my gosh. Okay, they keep texting me. I'm going to turn my phone off for a second because it's very distracting. Okay, addendum number 1 is where we can add additional terms. So I'm just going to show you how to actually physically do this. Let's say that you want to ask the seller for closing costs, which you would never want to do in this market. Well, you might want to do in this market, but not very often. But you want to have the seller pay some of your buyer's closing costs. What you'll do is you'll just, over here in the available clauses, you're going to type in something to help you find it, like what I did with the closing costs. Let's move it back. So let's say I want to get the little clause so that I can ask for closing costs. Just search for it. Okay, yeah, this is the one I want. Closing costs addendum to REPC. I'm going to drag it over to selected and then just hit load selected clauses. And it's going to literally add that in here. So now when you scroll down, seller's contribution to closing costs, seller agrees to contribute at settlement the amount of however much you're asking for. So these are clauses. You can just add them in and then you can, they'll be included in your contract. Another one that you might use a little bit more often right now is a disclosure of interest. So this is that thing, in real estate school where they said you have to disclose if you're related to a party or if you are the party in the transaction. You have to do the disclosure of interest. That's what this one is. So it says the buyer is either a relative of a real estate broker or is the real estate broker in this transaction. So pretty simple. But you'll notice that no matter which of these clauses you add here, you can add multiple of them. So you can add 2 if you wanted. No matter what you add here, it'll always have this blank area down below where you can just type. So let's say I wanted the personal interest, I wanted the seller contribution to closing costs. Now I'm just going to type in here. So I'm going to type item number 3, and things that you might type right now are like on that house, we're offering $420 on it, but maybe we want to make it more aggressive, which we probably do. So we might say earnest money to be non-refundable upon acceptance, which means basically that no matter what happens, if they accept our offer, our earnest money is going to be gone. So my buyers would have to be pretty certain that they plan on closing on this property, because they're kind of going to basically waive their chance to back out and take their earnest money, right? If they leave, they're going to lose their earnest money. So of course you'd have to make sure that they understand what they're getting into, understand the risks, and they totally get it. But this is where you could kind of put stuff like that. You can also this can also be a place where we just communicate with people. Like sometimes I'll say, buyer will schedule inspection within 24 hours of acceptance and will not ask seller for repairs. That's more of, it's not really a contractual thing. I mean, it is, it says you will schedule the inspection, but it's more, I'm saying, hey, we're going to be on it. We're not going to leave you hanging. We're not going to order the inspection a week later and then cause drama about it. So we can kind of use this to communicate with them as well. And then in a different market, or maybe on a different type of property, because not everywhere is it just hot right now. But if you go in here, maybe like my very first transaction that I did, it had the back deck was all torn up. It wasn't stable. It was a big mess. So we basically put an item in here that said, seller agrees to have X decking company rebuild the entire deck at a cost of whatever. And then I put whatever the quoted price was, something like that. So you could also ask for the seller to do something. Or one last example I'll give, sometimes a house is a mess. It's got a lot of stuff in it. You can say, seller agrees to remove everything from the garage or backyard or whatever. Okay, so that's just where you can write random stuff. It is part of the contract, but it's more freehand. It's not something that's already been addressed. Okay, is that up until that point just how this form works, how we kind of fill out the contracts? Does that make sense to you guys? Is that easy enough to kind of follow how you do that in the MLS? Okay.
How much earnest money do people generally put down?
Yeah, great question. Normally it's about 1% is kind of the baseline. So 1% of the purchase price is standard. Right now we'll go a little heavier than that just to kind of make sure that everyone knows we're serious. It used to be we'd go as low as $500. I think that's kind of laughable now, but some people probably still do that.
Okay, awesome. Thanks.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so that's kind of how you'll fill in your contract here. Now let's talk about the next step, which is where we're actually going to discuss what to do with it next. So once you've got this all put together, which, like I said, I promise Rich is going to go through it in detail. I was going to say painstaking detail, but from Rich, it's always a good time with Rich, but it will be in a lot of detail, and you'll get, as you know, all the info that you need. But let's go to, okay, we've already got this filled out. We've got it looking just the way we want. We've got all the terms the way we want. Really happy about the way our offer looks. This is the next step. You're going to hit print PDF right here. It's going to say, okay, do you want a PDF of all of these or just some of them? I'm going to say, no, I want generate a PDF of all of them. And now it's going to download a PDF. Well, it's going to open this, and I'm going to be able to download a PDF here. Now you're always going to want to, let's see, offer McEwen. So, okay, save that. So now I've got a PDF of this. Now, just as a note, I'm not going to overdo it right now, but you do want to double check this. Probably triple check it, probably have Nick check it, all that stuff, because it is a contract and it is binding. This is a legal deal. You know, you do this wrong, then you could get yourself into trouble. You could get your clients to agree to things they don't want to. So do double check it. Not to scare you, but do be very careful with your contracts. For example, let's say that you meant to put 500,000 and you well, bad example. Let's say you meant to put 320,000 and you accidentally put 420,000. Your client is now under contract to purchase the house for $100,000 more. Now, as long as you don't have a non-refundable earnest money and you catch it quick, no big deal. You could probably either change it or back out if they'll let you. If they'll let you change it, you'll change it. If not, you'll probably have to back out. It's probably more important on the seller side because sellers don't normally have any contingencies. So with my sellers, you know, if you get your sellers to agree to sell a property for $380 and they thought they were selling it for $390, they're not getting that $10,000 back, $10,000 back unless you're giving it to them, because their buyer's not going to say, oh yeah, I'll pay 10,000 more. So you have to be pretty careful about that stuff. Make sure to double, triple, quadruple check it. I mean, I've bought at least one fridge. I've bought a couple things because I missed a check mark or something. I mean, I think we've all been there. I lost $500 of someone's earnest money once. But so, you know, I'm not going to say it's going to be super easy and you can just be perfect, but do be very careful and just take it seriously. I'm sure you guys all will. Probably am wasting my breath even talking about it, but just go through, double check it, make sure it looks good. And then what you're going to do is you're going to call your client. You're going to say, hey, let me run through this with really quick. You're going to run through the pricing. You're going to say, hey, here's kind of what the comps are selling for. Here's kind of what you're also going to have to make some sort of recommendation of, hey, here's what I think you should offer on it if you want to have a good chance of getting it. Sometimes people don't know what to offer. And so a lot of times I'll give them a very aggressive option and then I'll give them a less aggressive option. So like on this one, it might be, okay, we could offer 420 and still have time for inspections and all that stuff to protect your earnest money. Or I'll say, if you totally love this house, I would go in at 330 or 340 and I would do non-refundable earnest money. And then I'll say, you kind of decide, is this just a house or is this like the house for you? You tell me. If you just love this house, willing to throw anything at it, let's go with the higher one. Otherwise, you know, we can do the other one and just let them choose. We don't want to take too much responsibility for our clients' decisions. This is their deal. Let them make the decision. And it helps you sleep a little bit better knowing that you educated them, gave them all the info that they needed about worst cases and best case scenarios. Best and worst case scenarios, and they know what to expect, and they make the decision. Now you can sleep soundly, and you don't have to feel like anything is your fault. If they get it, if they don't get it, whatever, you're letting them make their own decisions. All right.
Question.
Yeah.
Is it still a strong offer because I know on the REPC, and I can't remember exactly where, but there's 2 spots for earnest money where you can have earnest money at a later date. Would it still be a strong offer if you did like half a percentage upfront and said like, okay, well, this is non-refundable upon acceptance. And then at this later date, when we pay the other half, like that's still soft until like due diligence period is over.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. You could also, like, say I put 5,000 in here for earnest money was $5,000. Then you could say in the very end, you could say, in the very end, then you would say $2,500 of the earnest money is to be non-refundable upon acceptance, something like that. So you can definitely manipulate it to be whatever you want. You could do it that way, or you could, yeah, the way that you said, you could say, you could add, there's a section for additional earnest money, which is right here, 8.4. So you could also do it there. This could be additional earnest money. You could add the other 2,500 there, whichever one you wanted. I usually do it all at once. I don't want to have to collect another check. But maybe if they say they were short on cash at the moment, but they have a tax return or something coming in, and they said, hey, we only have 2,500, you could do an offer for 2,500 up front and 2,500 in 2 weeks or something like that. So awesome. Good question. Think of those questions and make sure you ask Rich those as well, because some people, like, Rich is the man, and some people get intimidated by him because he's, so smart. So don't be intimidated. He'll answer your questions. He wants to help you, but I just find people don't ask him questions. I think maybe just because he seems so smart and he's a little intimidating maybe, but he loves helping. He loves being part of that. So don't go easy on him either. Okay, once you've gone through this, now once you've got it all set up, I like to call my client. I'll go through this. I'll say, hey, here's kind of what we think price-wise. And then what I'm going to do is I'm literally going to run through the whole contract with them. I'm basically going to scroll through, not word for word, but I'm going to I use this as my reminder. Otherwise, I'll forget about some of it. So instead, what I do is I literally scroll through while I'm on the phone with them. I'll say, okay, so let's just talk about earnest money. I put 1%, which is, $4,000. Is that okay? Yes. Okay, good. Then in included items, we did ask them to leave the fridge. Is that good? Is that what you wanted? I'll say, okay, then we put this purchase price, XYZ purchase price for whatever reason. I'm just going to kind of run down possession. Possession is talking about like when they'll actually get keys to the property. So we got to touch on that and see if we want to, upon recording would be like instant access to the keys. Blank days after recording means you wouldn't get keys until a couple days after. So anyways, I don't want to end up teaching you the REPC twice. That's what I'm trying to avoid. But at any rate, you're going to go through here. You're going to say, okay, these are all the things that we're kind of agreeing to. We're agreeing that, within our dates, your earnest money is going to be protected, but within other dates, like if we were actually just discussing this offer, I would say, okay, now, like we discussed, we're going to make the earnest money non-refundable upon acceptance. Now what that means is if the inspection comes back and there's a huge problem, we're either going to have to buy the house anyways. We can still ask the seller to fix it, but if they won't, we're still either going to have to buy this house anyways, or we're going to be out our earnest money. That's an actual risk to them, right? So you have to make sure they understand what they're offering. Make sure that they're on the same page. Okay, this isn't for us. They're the ones that are the principal in the transaction, so we can help them set it up, but ultimately they have to make those decisions. Okay. Okay, once that's done, we've already downloaded this PDF. I'm just gonna give you the quick and dirty DocuSign tutorial, just because it seems complicated when you go in here, but I promise you it's super, super slick. So the way I like to do it is I literally go to DocuSign.com. You can go it through command, but for right now, I'm gonna show you in DocuSign because I think this is the quicker, faster way when you're not in a transaction yet. Just go to DocuSign.com. Very simple. Go to login, which is in this top right corner. Put in your DocuSign account. Let me just show you really quick where you can find that. You have an email, and I think Kimber covered it a little bit on Tuesday, but you have an email in here that says, I don't know who to pick, but at any rate, you have an email in here, and it'll basically, when you go through in there, it'll actually say, yeah, I don't really want to show everyone's passwords, but at any rate, if you look through this this email, like yeah, I don't think it'll really show a password.
That's an impressive inbox total,
Hey,
Nick.
hey, thanks, I appreciate that. So when you look at the very front, as you scroll down, you'll find the DocuSign passwords and stuff that you can use. So anyways, you'll use your email, you'll type in your password that you have for DocuSign, and then you'll hit login. So still pretty easy. DocuSign also has an app that is kind of nice to use on the go. I wouldn't set up documents in there, but you know, it's kind of nice if you're just signing something on the go. It kind of makes it easy. Okay, once you get in here, you can literally, this is literally as soon as I log in, it says drop documents here to get started. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to grab this PDF, going to drop it there. And sorry to all you Mac users. I know you're probably all Mac users. I honestly don't know how to do half of this on a Mac. So somehow you got to download and then you got to click and drag into here. Okay, now I've got my offer in here. You have to add recipients. So up here, this is where you're going to add any PDFs. So if you have other PDFs that you need signed, you can add them here. Right below it, you're going to add recipients. So this is anyone who needs to sign. So Carrie is one of them. Oh, she's not in here. Let's see. Carrie at kw.com. Okay. So she's going to have to sign it, right? Because she's the client. I'm going to have to sign it because I'm the agent. So the buyer broker portion is going to have a requirement that I sign it. So I'm going to add me on there, and then that would be it. Okay. If there's multiple buyers, married couple, or you know, someone buying it with their kid or their parent or whatever, you have to add anyone who's going to sign has to be added separately. You can't add them together. Then down here, you can change the message. So right now it's just called whatever the PDF was. I'm going to change this to offer on whatever this house was. It was Butterfield. Offer Butterfield. Because this is the email subject that your client's going to see when you actually send this. And then I'm going to go to next. And then literally all you're going to do is set up those signatures. So just like if you were in person, you would have your client initial the bottom of every single page, and you would have them sign the very last page. So the last page of every form. So like, let me zoom out. I got a little zoom crazy when we were looking. Oh, now it's getting worse. I never figured out why that happens, why I zoom in and it gets worse. But I can definitely try it here. Let's see. Probably too small, or okay, now got to remember how numbers work and whatnot. Okay, 150. So okay, this is our buyer broker agreement. The buyer broker agreement is 3 pages long. So you'll notice there's an initial spot on the bottom of every page, and then on the last page, which is the 3rd page, it has signatures. You'll see that pattern. So on every form, you'll have to sign the last page of it, and you'll have to initial every single page of it. So they'll initial every page, they'll sign at the end of every form. So all you have to do is literally you just set it up the way you want. So I need them to initial the top page. Well, when I say them, I need Carrie to initial the top page. I just grab initial. She's selected up here. So I just grab initial, I drag it over here. You're good. If you're a good person, you'll probably add date signed here. Sometimes I skip that, I'll be honest. I just date the last page, but should probably be better than that. So then let's go to the 2nd page, initial, date. And then we need her to sign. So I'll have her sign right here and date. You don't really need the address and phone number. You could put it there, but I never have, probably in my entire career. So then you're going to have it accepted by the authorized buyer's agent, which would be me. So to switch who's signing it, because these were all Carrie signatures, I need to sign this one. So I'm just going to go select the person up here, choose me, sign, date. Okay. And then she's going to have to initial the bottom of this page as well. So then I'll have her initial there. Okay, as it pertains to how I just signed the buyer broker agreement, any questions on that, or is that pretty simple? Pretty easy. Okay, it's if you come in here and no one tells you how, it turns into a big ordeal. But now I think that you've seen it, you'll be pretty good with it. But if you have any questions, let me know. Now I do want to show you one other thing, because this is the part that gets really confusing for people. When you go to the very bottom of the very last page of the REPC, I'm just scrolling down here. We go to the bottom page of the REPC. So the REPC is 6 pages long. Go to the 6th page. We'll put in all of these deadlines. We'll fill out the whole REPC, and then the very last part says offer and time for acceptance. Now, what this means, and it's got similar verbiage at the end of an addendum. It says, well, I guess it's not labeled the same, but it says the same thing basically at the bottom. What this is, it says buyer offers to purchase the property based on these terms and conditions. If seller does not accept this offer by blank time on blank date, this offer will lapse and the brokerage will return any earnest money to the buyer. So typically we don't turn on earnest money in until it's accepted anyways. We have 4 days after acceptance to turn in the earnest money. So that's not really an issue, but this offer will lapse at whatever time you put in here. So if we put in the offer today and we say that this offer will lapse at 6 p.m. tonight, the 26th, then if they don't respond to us by tonight at 6 o'clock, our offer will lapse. So typically you're going to want to give them more time than that to sign, especially like in this case, this house just barely hit the market. They're probably going to want it to have an open house and to go through the whole weekend, get as many people through. So I would probably make this date be, maybe Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. So they have plenty of time to accept it. Other people will try to make a really quick acceptance deadline here to kind of try to bully the seller into accepting their offer before it expires. Like, hey, we're going to offer you this amazing offer, but it expires tonight. So you better decide if you want to accept it or not. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but most people aren't able to be bullied that easily, but there are some agents who will get emotional about it, or sellers that will get emotional about it. So you can use that as a tactic if you want to, but I prefer to give them plenty of time so that once they respond, this contract will still be valid. I don't want it to be lapsed when they return it to me, okay? The other thing that I just want to let you know, let me show you, like I said, this is not labeled the same, but every addendum will have similar verbiage to what we just looked at. To the extent the terms of this addendum modify any provisions of the REPC. So basically, these are changing the REPC. These are adding terms to the REPC. All other terms of the REPC that are not modified will remain the same. And then it says, seller shall have until blank time on blank day to accept the terms of this addendum. So again, we're just setting up a deadline. Now, when we send this in, we want this deadline to be the same on both of these forms. Obviously, they want to match. We want this whole offer to expire all at the same time, okay? Now, one last thing that I'm just going to touch on, because people get very confused with it, is where people are going to sign. So if this is my buyer, Carrie's my buyer, I'm going to have her sign, obviously, right here on the REPC, the very last page. It says buyer signature, so that makes it easy. Buyer signature. I'm going to have her initial the bottom, just like I'll have her initial the bottom of every page. And then I'm going to have her sign it, and then I'll send it to the seller. Now, what the seller is going to do is they're going to do this portion. So some people just hate sending the offer over with this part left undone. It just feels weird to send one that's not completed. That's because this is how the seller is going to respond. So the seller is either going to, just so you know, you can add checkboxes. You add them right here. You just click and then double click in the white space and it'll check it. So just so you know, there is the option to add checkboxes. This is where the seller is going to either accept, counteroffer, or reject. And might I add that in this market, a lot of times you're not going to even get a rejection. You may just not hear back. And that's kind of how you know that it's not accepted. So do try to follow up with the agents, try to get a confirmation like, hey, You know, are they going to accept it? Did they go another way? What's going on? You want to try to communicate that, but sometimes the listing agent just won't be able to get back to you and you just have to move on. I know it's frustrating after you put all this time into it, but you're not always going to get a rejection. So maybe I'll just set the expectation there. And then same thing on the addendum when you're actually, I don't know why I have this random signature there. There, who cares? So then on the addendum, same thing. Since it's my buyer, she's going to have to sign right here. So we put in the rest of our terms of the addendum. I'm going to have her sign right here. I'm going to put a checkbox that says she's the buyer. And then just because we put so many things up here that it kind of pushed it off to the second page. So your buyer's still going to initial the bottom of this page. And then you'll notice that on the next page, that's where the seller's response is going to be. So they're going to check acceptance, counteroffer, or reject, and then they'll send it back to you. Just make sure you don't forget to initial the bottom page as well. Every page will have to be initialed. The last page of every form has to be signed. Okay. So then once I've got all of these initials and signatures set up the way we want, then you just hit send. And I'm pretty sure when I hit send it, it's actually going to send it. Yeah, there's not another page between here and there. So once I hit send, it'll actually send it to them. So I'm not going to do that just so that I don't, just so that Carrie and I will both have one less email in our inbox. Because as Tyler noticed, I've got a pretty good inbox. I guarantee you Carrie's doesn't look like that. Hers is much more neat. So anyway, so I'm just going to go in here and discard, but just know that, that's kind of how you'll do the DocuSign. Now, once it's completely done, like once it's completely been accepted or, not accepted. Once your client has signed, now let's find a DocuSign in here. Once your client has signed, you'll get a form. You'll get an email that says like this. Where is completed, please DocuSign. Right here. So like you'll get an email that says completed, please DocuSign, launch coaching, whatever. So it's not an offer, but it's just a form that someone was signing. So if I click on this, it'll actually say, okay, the document was completed. This document has been completed and signed, and then it'll have the PDF of that form. So if, once your client signs it, it'll send you an email like this that will say completed. It'll have the PDF here. I can download that. And now that's the form that I'm actually going to download, and I'm going to send that to put my offer in. Now, one last tiny note, you don't want to send over your buyer brokerage documents over to the seller because it's just not their business and it's not relevant. You'll only send the REPC and any addenda that you have. That's what you'll attach to your email. And then you're literally just going to start an email. You're going to steal the, you're going to go back to that MLS listing. So we're going to go back to, what was it called? Butterfield Road. We're going to go down, find the agent here. We're going to steal their email, or it's not, for some reason it's not working. So I'm going to steal this one here. I'm going to copy that. I mean, at this point, it's very simple. You're going to put their email in there. I'm going to put in the subject, I offer to purchase Butterfield Road. Butterfield Road. I'm going to write a bunch of great things about them. My buyer is well qualified, has tons of cash to make up for an appraisal, to make up for an additional, any difference in the appraisal. You're going to put in basically all the terms that you want. You're going to highlight your buyer, right? I'll write something nice about them. You just want to, you're going to kind of pump them up a little bit. And then you're just going to attach that offer. You're also going to attach their pre-approval letter because you want to be able to show that they're pre-approved and they're ready to go. So you'll attach the pre-approval letter. You'll make this look all good. One note when I'm doing VA offers, just kind of a random note, but when you're doing VA offers, I really lay into the fact that they're military. So in the email that I send them, I will let them know they're military. in the text that I sent to the agent, because once you send this, you also are going to send a text to the agent. You're probably even going to call them too, but they may or may not answer. Make sure they know your buyer is VA, because it makes a difference. And a lot of times they'll get thrown away like a FHA buyer. So I try to make it very clear, like VA buyer, because, and I'll play up their military service, whatever I know about it. I'll add that in there, just because right now VA buyers are getting put at the bottom of the pile with FHA buyers, because I know why. It's because VA loans are part of the federal government, which is not super well known for its ability to handle things efficiently in many people's view, I guess. Maybe other people disagree with that. And so that's why it's being pushed to the bottom of the pile. But you have to do everything you can, in my opinion, to make sure that that seller knows this is a VA buyer, and we should actually put it at the top of the stack, not the bottom. And we should really try to make sure we take care of our military people. So hopefully that doesn't sound political. It sounds political when it comes out, but I just mean it as we want to take care of our people, right? So anyways, put together your offer, put your PDF in there, again, not the agency documents, just the REPC and any addenda that are necessary, your pre-approval. Some people will put a personal letter from the buyer. That's a little touchy-feely for even me, but some people really enjoy that. That's totally fine. Do whatever makes your heart sing. I think the Reigns team probably told you to send a video of the offer, which I think is a great idea. I know they'll send a video over with their offer, which if that gets them a little bit of an edge, why not? What's it going to hurt? So anyways, send this off, communicate with the listing agent, and then you're just going to kind of sit back and wait and see what the outcome is. So that was probably pretty detailed version of how to write an offer. What questions do you have about kind of how I went through that process? Is that easy, difficult? Any questions you have about how to do it?
I have one question. Good job going over it, by the way. It was very thorough. I was wondering if you put in the clause that earnest money goes hard upon acceptance, but the sellers back out, do the buyers still lose their earnest money because the offer was accepted?
If the seller defaults, then no, I would say no. But I'm not going to lie to you. I literally asked Rich a similar question the other day, because I just don't think being non-refundable, even though I've used it a lot lately, saying the earnest money is non-refundable is not very specific. Who is it non-refundable to? Like, what happens to it? Whereas everywhere else in the contract, it says, it says if this happens, then the earnest money will be released to either the buyer or the seller based on the situation. And so, that's actually a good point. If you put earnest money is, we didn't come up with a great solution to it, but basically earnest money is non-refundable to that's actually a good question. I'm not going to lie to you.
Can we just put unless seller defaults, earnest money becomes non-refundable upon acceptance, just to be very clear?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you could do that. I mean, the other thing is there might be a couple other possibilities that would come up where I like that. In case of seller default, with the exception of seller default.
I just want to avoid any ambiguity. If I can talk, anything that's not clear.
Avoiding ambiguity is a great policy on REPC. So yes, thank you. Awesome. Okay. What other questions have you guys got?
I have a question, Nick.
Yeah, please.
So when you were filling out the commission portion on the buyer agreement, but it's the seller, who's typically going to pay that. I was a little unclear on, do you actually put 3% or whatever the commission is going to be in that spot? Or do you just leave it empty? Or what happens if the buyer agent commission is listed at like 2% on the listing instead of 3%? How does that work out?
You're talking about on the buyer broker agreement, right?
Yes.
So normally I put 3% on there, And then the question is, if you have a listing, if you sell a property that say it pays, say the property pays, what am I thinking? Oh, property pays 2.5% commission, then you're going to have to decide, technically on paper, the buyer has agreed that you will get paid 3%. And now that listing's only paying you 2.5%. So technically that buyer still owes you 0.5% of the commission. Now in practice, most of us would not charge a client that. Most of us would say, hey, we're just going to accept that 2.5 as payment. But in reality, but in writing, it does say that they're going to pay you up 3% if that's not what you get paid by the listing. So, but it makes more sense to put a higher commission than what you get than it would to like put 2% in there, because then that would mean you're like rebating or whatever. So, yeah, good question.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Yeah, of course. Awesome. Everyone feels pretty good about that.
Just one more question. If we do end up, not on the buyer side necessarily, but either side, doing a transaction for ourselves or our, like my widowed mother, how do I do something like that?
Yeah, so you just want to make sure that you disclose anything. So if you are the buyer, remember that that disclosure of interest clause that we added to that addendum, definitely put that. And that says either that you can choose either that the buyer is related to you or that the buyer is you. So you have kind of those options there. Other things that would be different, there's not really a lot. You just have to be very careful because you're looked at, even though you're one of the parties to the transaction, you're still a real estate licensee in Utah. So
Okay.
You just have to be very careful that you are not that I know that this would not be an issue for you, but I'm just saying you have to make sure that you're acting ethically as if you were the real estate agent in the transaction, because you're kind of still held to that same standard, even though it's you buying it or selling.
No, that makes so much sense. So the only question I have then is, with transactions like that, we still run them through the brokerage, same thing. Rich still wants copies, right?
Mm-hmm.
All of that. Yes.
Yep. And the way that they do it, so they don't split your commission. The brokerage charges $1,000 for a personal deal. So basically, instead of taking a split, it's a max of $1,000 charged. Yeah, and if you're capped, if you've already hit your cap, then it's just included in that. You don't have to pay any more. But yeah, they used to do them for free like years and years ago. They said your personal deals are free, but they run into so much more liability. They actually run into more liability if you are a part of the transaction than if you're not. So anyways, that's kind of why it's that way.
So if you're listed as, if you're the agent and you're selling your own home, do agents tend to pay themselves a commission to like get cash out of it? Or do they just like leave that out? Or is there I don't know, how does that work?
Yeah, like I wouldn't. If I'm selling my own property, I wouldn't charge myself a commission probably. I might charge myself $1,000 commission just so that automatically gets sent over to the brokerage to pay that $1,000 fee. If you're buying, I would possibly take a commission, but more like I would probably put it towards the purchase price or put it towards your closing costs or something like that is more likely what you do. Because then it's less about keeping the brokerage's hands off of it. It's more about keeping Uncle Sam's hands off of it. Because if you take it as income, then obviously it's going to get introduced into your income taxes. So if it were me, I would not take it as a commission. I would just not charge myself or put it towards the closing costs or something like that.
Okay.
So awesome. Okay, thanks for the questions. Let me go. I don't see Rich on here, so I'm just going to go bug him really quick and make sure he's. So let's just take a couple-minute break. I'm going to go find him real quick, and I'll get him on here. So, okay, thanks, guys. I'll be right back.
All right, everybody. Sorry I'm a little late. Had some Zoom link complications.
They've heard that story before, right? That's apparently I did the same thing to Claire yesterday. So sorry, guys. So I just told them to take a minute or two of bathroom break. So they may not all be back, but can I intro you anyways?
Intro
Really
me anyways. That's okay.
It's really fun for me. I really enjoy that. So makes you feel like I'm like on morning radio or something. All right. So today we have, like I said, I just went through some of the DocuSign and how to fill some of that stuff out. But now I'm bringing on the master, Rich Summers. He's our principal broker here. So he's the one who can really help us with those sticky situations that hopefully we'll avoid altogether, but he'll always be there for us. He's a total pro when it comes to contracts and all that stuff. So we're really lucky to have him. So he's going to go ahead and go through the REPC and some of the agency documents with us. Definitely don't take it easy on him. Ask him questions, and yeah, it'll be good. One last thing. Once he's done, we're going to break, and then at 12:30 we have the lunch that's here at the office. It's going to be downstairs. So if you can come here at 12:30, that would be awesome. As soon as he's done, we'll break for that, and then I'll see you at 12:30. Awesome. Thanks, Rich. Take it away.
Okay, so I have 1 hour. Is that right?
Yeah, I put you until 12 o'clock.
Okay.
And as if you needed my permission, I said you could cut it early if you, if you get through it all faster. So
Perfect. All right, let me make sure I have the option to share my screen. I do. Let me pull this up.
Hey, Nick. So at 12:30, are we doing Zoom, or do we have to be in person for the next meeting?
Zoom is it's an in-person, it's actually an in-person lunch. It's the only in-person thing out of all of them. So it's here and it's downstairs.
Okay. Is there any other training after that, or is it just?
No. So the lenders are coming in. They're going to talk about pre-qualification and the different loan programs. So yes, they'll be here in person.
Cool. Thanks.
Cool, for sure.
Okay, we're gonna play a game first off. Let me share my screen. And it should be this one right here. All right, do you see this joinmyquiz.com? All right, I'm gonna have everybody either on their phone or on their computer go to this website and put in that code. I figure if I just sit here and talk about contract, we're all going to be bored to death. So at least we can start with a fun interactive quiz. All right, Sabrina's on and Miguel. Megan made it. Lindsay. Seven of us. I see a lot of names on there, but okay, we'll give it 30 more seconds and we'll get this thing started. While you're logging in, let me just tell you about these quizzes. You're gonna fail this quiz and that's okay. This quiz is very hard, but it's REPC basics at the same time. So if you get 50%, you're better than most. You're probably going to get 3 out of 10. And the reason I do that is I try to put questions together that will stump even the experts, because you guys are now being paid to be. Oh, I don't know why my screen just left me, but okay, I am going to all right, let's start this quiz. looks like Tyler and Alicia are tied.
Hey, Rich, I am driving, so I'm not going to finish the rest of the quiz.
That's okay.
I'm trying to take it at stoplights. I'm like, I don't think this
You're
is
fine.
safe.
You don't
So
need to take it.
I'm gonna not.
It's
Sorry
just
about that.
mostly something to do for fun.
No, it's super fun. I got a couple wrong. I was like, oh, darn it. Okay.
Well, you got some right for sure. You did well. Keep driving. Drive safe.
Thank you. I'll see you at 12:30.
Okay. Sabrina, 3 in a row. Way to be. All right, looks like some of you guys have finished. We're going to be wrapping up in a bit. Tyler took the lead at the very end question. Way to be. We'll see if it holds strong. Okay, 1 minute for those that haven't finished. Aren't you glad the real estate school questions aren't like this? Everybody's on mute, so somebody will have to unmute eventually. But okay, I'm going to end this in 15 seconds. Even though there's time for the others, put your last guess in. 10, 9, 8, 3, 2, 1. All right, it's ended. Okay, looks like Sabrina, Chantel, and Tyler. Way to go, guys. All right, so I'm going to move this over. Now you see my highlighted screen. Is that right, Tyler? I'm going to ask you since everyone else is on mute, I believe.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay.
Hey, Rich, I got a quick question. So it looks like it's recording this. Is there any way to send this so we can kind of go back and review as you talk about it, or no?
If it's being recorded, Nick will probably have a copy.
Okay.
I will send you this highlighted copy.
Sweet.
The best way for this class, and I'm sorry, I probably should have had I don't know what Nick explained or not. The best way for this class is to have a paper and a pencil, and if you can have the real estate purchase contract in front of you, that would be beneficial.
Okay.
That being said, I'm going to highlight paragraphs. We're going to go through it quickly. It's tough to go through the whole contract in 45 minutes, but we're going to do so. Okay, so I have the buyer broker highlighted, but I'm gonna skip that because I think most of you know, well, it's okay. Is this class advertised as buyer broker contracts or real estate purchase contract? Does anyone know? All right, I'm just gonna assume it's everything contract wise. The main thing about the buyer broker agreement is gonna be this section, section 2. It's gonna talk about your fee. If you don't have the buyer broker signed prior to signing homes, you will see agents try to steal your clients from you and tell them that they'll give you a better deal if they sign the contract with them. So personally, I think it's really important to have this buyer broker signed prior to showing homes. I know plenty of people won't, but just know that there's a definite risk if you don't. The other thing I like about this contract, you have fiduciary duties that include loyalty, obedience, full disclosure, confidentiality, reasonable care, and any other duties required by law. The way I see it, this is a two-way contract. And if you're wanting to enforce this contract, you better make sure that those fiduciary duties are covered. And the main one being reasonable care. So that's all right. So I'm going to jump ahead. We're going to go over the REPC primarily today. And I'm going to make this bigger.
Hey, Rich, I was just wondering if you could let me in. I'll be switching devices.
I will try. I'm not sure I'm the host, but Nick left, so maybe I am. Let me give you my number to text me if you get kicked out and can't get back in.
Okay, thank you.
801 809 7983. Oh, Jessica's there. It is. Okay, I got you in.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. For the sake of the colors on this thing, I just yellows and greens are pretty much the same. They're just to differentiate, but they're basically the more basic things to notice. The red highlighted areas means that there's going to need to be an addendum. And then the blue is something that I want you to pay a little bit more special attention to. So the very first question was, can a seller cancel a REPC if the earnest money is turned in after 4 calendar days? And the answer on that was yes. 10 of you got that right. 3 got it no. It states right here in the earnest money that it has 4 calendar days. And if we jump ahead to section 16, which I'm not going to do to make us not dizzy, but one of the options is if the buyer is in default, the seller may cancel the contract and actually keep the earnest money. So even though the earnest money was never turned in, they can cancel it, and then they could essentially demand that earnest money in a court if the buyer's not willing to do it. So please make sure that the earnest money is turned in. The other thing that I don't have highlighted in the form of blank, you could put in the form of a check, in the form of a wire, to be determined by the buyer. The main thing here is we want to be very direct on how that money is going to be sent and whether it's at the brokerage or at the title company. And by default, we see in this highlighted section, earnest money will come to the buyer's brokerage unless changed in an addendum later on. Okay, which is not listed as an included item in section 1.1. If I drag that over, does that pop up temporarily? The quiz?
Yes.
Okay. TV mounting bracket, garage door openers, draperies, and those are all part of the contract. Oddly enough, if we look in section 1.1, we do not see keys here. We see the garage door openers here. We see the TV mounting bracket. Where's that one? It's up here. Why do I mention the keys? Some people want to have that glory Instagram moment where that key is handed to them. And I've actually had it in the past where the seller did not have the keys, and the only way we could get in through to the home was through the garage code. And it really irritated my client, but it's fine. Other things that we don't see here in the included items. Well, the main key, well, I'm jumping ahead of myself. The main thing here, if presently owned and in place on the property. So certain things that could not be presently owned. Sometimes you might have a home being sold and there's a tenant that lives there. Some of those items may be a tenant's, maybe a Nest thermostat or an alarm system. Those might be the personal property of the client, of the tenant. So they would not be included even if they are listed in this section. All right, I highlighted the screen S on refrigerators. The very most dangerous part of the real estate purchase contract are these check boxes. These check boxes can sway the contract significantly. If by some chance this is marked and there's two kitchens and maybe a refrigerator in a theater room, and they only had the intent of leaving the upstairs kitchen fridge, by marking this, now all three refrigerators will be left. And you might be buying your client a refrigerator if you told them that it would not be left. So, okay, questions on 1.1? Okay, section 1.4. This is a tricky section because it's talking about water rights and shares, but it's stating list here any that are going to be specifically excluded. So on section 1.4, as a buyer's agent, I can't think of a reason why you would ever write anything on this line. The water rights and shares will come if you leave this line blank. Okay. Question 2, you represent the seller. Section 2.2, seller buyer's property is marked is. What is the best addendum to send as a counter offer? Okay, so this was a main question. The subject to sell a buyer's property addendum is what we is what the buyer is going to provide with the offer, but we want to make sure that we have the right to still advertise and collect other offers. And so we're going to want to have the option to keep it still on the market and accept backup offers to essentially force this one to move forward. So let's go to 2.2. You see right here, if checked in the affirmative, the terms of this attached subject to sale of buyer's property addendum apply. So we know that subject to, we know that addendum that everyone marked, we know that that's going to be included, but the question was, what are we going to add on top of that as a counteroffer, because we represent the seller and not the buyer in that example. Main thing right now in this market, most sellers are not willing to look at offers that are subject to a home selling. And so we need to be very strategic on how we put together offers to make it so our client is still protected, yet they have the ability to get the home in this where there's multiple offers every property. So we can explore that in additional courses, but today we're just going to go through the basics. So, okay. Buyer is purchasing with cash. Settlement is Monday. When is the closing and funding recording deadline? Okay, this was a trick question, and the key word here is cash. Cash transactions, settlement, closing equal the same day. If there is a loan, so if they put in here, yeah, I'm going to jump ahead, but if they put in section 8.3 right here that financing is required, now we have 4 calendar days. So if this word said buyer's purchasing with a loan, the answer would be Friday, but because it said cash, the answer is Monday. When we count calendar days, if it went under contract Monday, Monday is calendar day 0. Tuesday is 1, Wednesday's 2, Thursday's 3, Friday is 4. So you need to remember the day that is accepted is calendar day 0. And if it says calendar days, 1 is the day after. Sorry, I'm going back and forth. I'm trying to make sure you know what I'm going through. Any questions yet?
No, not yet.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Christy, for being the one that responded to anything. I guess a few have. Okay, this is a question. It doesn't come up often. It's never been addressed, but it's something that's unique in the contract you should know. When does the buyer agree to be responsible for the utilities? It's not upon closing and recording, and it's not upon possession. By default, it is actually the settlement deadline in 24D. So utilities, they agree to be responsible for them. Most people assume it's upon closing. And if your possession is going to be significantly out, I would highly suggest you negotiate that, make sure that the seller is going to be responsible for those utilities, because it's not upon possession or closing. It's at that settlement deadline. Okay, we're going to jump to section 7 in a minute. Let's finish up through 4. Okay, section 4 is the prorations. Most of this is for the HOA, HOA communities. How I would proceed with this one. I would always, as a buyer's agent, I will always mark seller in 4.2 and 4.3. And if I'm the listing agent, I will always counter. I will always counter if they mark those 2 sellers. Normally, I'll encourage my client to mark split equally. In this market, I've been recommending that they have buyer pay for both of those completely. Section 5, confirmation of agency. The main thing here, prior written receipt of agency. You need to have your buyer broker agreement, the buyer due diligence checklist, and the wire fraud agreement signed prior to this being completed. Title insurance, main thing here, that there's going to be marketable title to the property. And one thing that is too often overlooked that I would encourage you to do is make sure that you look at the commitment for title and see which items are excluded. So buyer does agree to accept title in the property subject to the contents of the commitment for title insurance. And sometimes those contents will have some exclusions. You need to make sure that they look at those exclusions or are aware of those. Where you're starting out, I would recommend you have your title company send it to you, and then I would call them and say, are there any exceptions or anything I should know that's out of the norm on this property? Okay. So the question here was, which HOA document is not required as part of the seller disclosures listed in section 7 of the REPC? A lot of you got it right, HOA questionnaire. So we do need to provide the CC&Rs, the most recent minutes, the financial statement, and the budget. The financial statement and budget, if we look over here, They're right here on line 7E. Most recent minutes, budget, and financial statement. Now, let's suppose that we represent a seller. And right now in this market, a lot of offers are taking some money non-refundable upon acceptance. But let's say your seller disclosure deadline in section 24A, which it references here. Let's suppose that seller disclosure deadline is 3 days after acceptance, and it's part of an HOA, and they do not send over the budget or financial statement, or they're missing one. Even though your buyer agreed that $5,000 will become non-refundable, the seller is now in default of the contract. And at that point, that non-refundable amount probably would become refundable because the seller is in default. So one misconception, seller disclosures is not just this 6-page document, it's all of these items per the home. So A and C in yellow are always included. D and E, if it's part of an HOA, are also included. And if it has a rental, it's these blue ones. And if it's older than 78, it's going to have that included. So all of those are the seller disclosures referenced in section 24A, not just that 6-page document. That's the biggest thing. What I would recommend when you take a listing is before you have it go live on the MLS, make sure you have these items. They are a little bit trickier to come up with and sometimes take days. So. Okay, if you're going to master a section of the REPC, it is this next section. Section 8, in my opinion, is the most important section of the contract. This is the way you can protect your buyer. This is the way you can protect your seller. This has check boxes, which I've told you already are very dangerous and change the contract. So we have 8.1, which is due diligence. We can either include this paragraph, all of 8.1 A through C, by marking is, or if we mark is not, this is essentially creating a line through this whole paragraph. 8.2 appraisal, same thing, is. This paragraph is included. If you put no, just strike through all these. I mean, you're not going to strike through it, but that's essentially what's happening. And then financing, if it's required, 8.3 is included. If financing is required, all this below is included. If you put it no financing required, then it's not included, even though if you could put no financing required and have the cash ability to purchase, even though you want to do a loan. By doing that, you might be limited on what sort of, might be limited. So you want to be very transparent with what's going on. Okay, let me go a little bit more in detail on section 8. All right, I'm gonna call on somebody. Janelyn, putting you on the spot, I'm sorry.
Rich.
Yes.
You're good.
Okay, so on due diligence, what are some of the reasons why my buyer could cancel if I mark is?
They can cancel for any reason, even if a light bulb's out.
Any reason, even if they sneezed in the property, you got it. It says right here, if buyer determines in buyer's sole discretion. So if they want to cancel, it's up to them, and that earnest money will come back to them in whole if it's before that deadline, unless something in the addendum changed that. The appraisal.
Can I mute again, or are you gonna call? Okay.
Appreciate it. Okay, appraisal condition. It's very simple. If the home doesn't appraise and this is marked is, then the buyer can cancel and send the appraised value to the other party. and they'll get their earnest money back also. Okay, this is the trickiest of the three sections, 8.3. And I'm going to specifically say 8.3 BI and this dollar amount right here. Christy, will you read this paragraph, 8.3 BI?
Yes. So I'm trying to see where you're at. So 8.3.
Right here, this highlighted section.
There you go. Okay. The buyer's right to cancel before the financing and appraisal deadline. If the buyer, in buyer's sole discretion, is not satisfied with the terms and conditions of the loan, buyer may, after the due diligence deadline referred in section 24B, if applicable, cancel the REPC by providing written note to seller no later than the financing and appraisal date referenced in section 24C, whereupon blank amount of money of buyer's earnest money deposit shall be released to seller without the requirement of further written authorization from buyer, and the remainder of the buyer's earnest money deposit shall be released to the buyer without further written authorization from the seller.
Thank you. All right, let's put this in layman's terms. Let's say earnest money is $10,000, and in this line we put 7,500. If my buyer cancels before due diligence, the full 10,000 is coming back to the buyer. If my buyer cancels after due diligence, but before financing deadline, 7,500 of it is going to the seller and 2,500 will go to the buyer, the difference of 10,000 minus whatever's on this line. If my buyer cancels after the financing and appraisal deadline, which they can do based off of section 2 right here, then the full 10,000 goes to the seller. Now, where there's some confusion is this question right here. Which section 8.3 BI puts some of the earnest money non-refundable to the buyer after due diligence unless which of the following occurs? The seller didn't agree to the buyer's requested repairs. Nope, that's due diligence. That money, that 7,500 will still be collected. That money goes to the seller because it's non-refundable. That is normally, that is correct, except there, I'm looking for one exception, which there is. If the home doesn't appraise, and if the home doesn't appraise, 8.3 is not why we are canceling, and that money is attached to 8.3. If we're canceling because the home doesn't appraise and we marked is here, we're canceling based off of the appraisal condition, and you see there's no money attached. So you need to make sure that you understand how those check boxes work in relation to each other. In this market, we're seeing a lot of people waive appraisal and they'll put is not, but they'll still have a financing, and then they'll have some money in here, which I would almost always encourage having money in here, a zero in there. Even if I represent the, either side I represent, I like to have money in this line. It makes my client as a buyer act and not drag their feet. They need to make their decision if they're going to cancel and get that earnest money back by due diligence. And at the same time, it protects my seller because after due diligence, a certain amount of the money is non-refundable. Okay. Any questions on that paragraph? Okay. Section 9, this is where you'll list any sorts of addenda as part of the contract. Let's say you put addendum number 1 through 3, and you sent over a REPC with the REPC and addendum 1 and maybe addendum 2, and you forgot addendum 3. The seller cannot accept the terms of the REPC 1 and 2 and not accept the terms of number 3. So if you ever see that there's an addendum listed here and it's not provided with the offer, make sure you get that offer, because we can't have a binding contract until we have all the documents that are referenced. Home warranties, this is what's talked about on the home warranties. You guys can, a lot of times we're seeing the home warranties pushed out of the transaction. In a normal market, normally they are included, I would say about 70 to 80% of the time. And the fee is typically $400 to $600 and paid for by the seller. Okay, 10.3. The main thing here is the condition of the home is going to be in substantially the same condition as it was on the date of acceptance. So you may have written an offer and it may have taken 7 days to be under contract. Well, if something happened to the home in that 7 days, it's going to be in the condition not of when you saw the home, but when acceptance took place. Normally, we're not going to have issues, but that's just something that you'll want to know, the wording of the contract. It talks about final walkthroughs. You don't have to do a final walkthrough. It doesn't void anything, but doing a final walkthrough prevents the problems from, usually you can take care of it without the courts if we find the problem at that time. Okay, changes during the transaction. I highlighted the same 7 words in 5 different areas. Without prior written consent of buyer. So you can't change the property, even if you think it's improving it, putting up a new fence or something like that without writing of the buyer. You can't take out a home equity line of credit. You can't start a new rental agreement or extend the lease with your current tenant. All of those things need to be with the consent of the buyer. So if you're trying to finalize a tenant relationship and you receive the offer, it's probably best if you would want to end or extend that relationship with that tenant prior to going under contract. That way, as the seller, you can just do it by yourself without the permission of the other party. Okay, 13 is boring, states that the signers could be a corporation, partnership, trust, estate, etc. The complete contract will be, is the REPC and any addenda or exhibits that are attached and can't be changed without another written agreement. Real Estate 101, I know you know that. Okay, mediation. The question comes up often, which do I prefer? Do I prefer to have it marked as shall or may at the option of the parties? Personally, I like may at the options of the parties. You can go through the differences with your client. The main thing is if you mark shall and let's say buyer closes and you represented seller and your buyer's now unhappy with something, this is going to force a mediation. Whereas may at the option of the parties, you still have the option to mediate, but you may not have wanted to pay that couple $100 to have a mediator and listen to that story. So that's my suggestion. 16, it's important to know how a buyer can default and a seller can default. For time purposes, I'm just going to encourage you read it. I feel like in school, they probably tell you about the default and what can take place there. Okay. Notices. Now, this is also an important section to know. Notice is different than acceptance. Notices, the most common ones are you've sent in an offer and you now want to remove that offer or counter offer, or you're under contract and you want to cancel the contract. A third one would be like a flexible settlement deadline, and you're going to let them know what date settlement will be. Well, anytime that a notice needs to be given, an email is not sufficient, or a phone call. It needs to be in writing, signed by the client, and received by the other party. So please don't assume that just because the transaction's going well and that communication with the other agent has been great, you need to protect your client and make sure that we do what the notices state we will do. Okay, section 19, no assignment. Which contracts can be assigned? Contract is never assignable, is what 10 of you put. And the buyer can assign to a friend's S Corp. Okay, What we see in section 19 is if it's related, so a family partnership or personal LLC would be permissible based off of this paragraph. So if you're trying to assign it to somebody that the seller, oh, excuse me, if the buyer owns any of these, it can be assigned to any of those without written consent of the seller. Section 20, main thing here is if 10% or more of the property is damaged, then either side can cancel and the earnest money will go back to buyer. I haven't seen that, but what you want to realize is 10%, that's usually, you know, $50,000 in damage on a property or greater. So if there's damage to the property and it's 30,000 and now your seller doesn't want to sell, they're obligated to repair that to the condition it was, and they're not really able to get out of the contract based off of this paragraph. So the 10%'s the get out of contract if you want. Lower than that, you still have to fix it if it's damaged. Okay, we're to the home stretch. Time is of the essence. 5 p.m. Mountain Time. If your deadline for due diligence is today, and you send over the cancellation and your client signs it at 4:50 p.m., but you don't email it to the other party till 5:01 p.m., that earnest money's lost and it will go to the seller. So this 5 p.m. is not a suggestion. It's a letter of law. The minute it's past 5, that date is passed. I would say I probably get 10 to 12 things that are escalated to me as a broker just based off of this deadline, and sometimes thinking it's calendar day as of midnight versus 5 p.m. You just need to view day end is 5 p.m. and I try to make myself always accessible between 2 and 5 p.m. because that's where most of those stress problems are going to be coming. Electronic signatures are legal. Talks about how acceptance only needs 2 things. It needs the seller or buyer to sign acceptance and the other side has communicated it. Does not say that it's been delivered. It still needs to be delivered, but there's a slight difference between this and notice. So here's those deadlines and the time for acceptance. Just like before, if we let's say we put 7 p.m. for acceptance and they mark acceptance and it's 7:15 p.m., we're going to need to put an addendum together that just states buyer and seller are satisfied with all the terms, and because we're not technically in contract if they sign it after the acceptance deadline. So, okay, we have 4 minutes. Does anybody have 1 or 2 questions? I know, I'm sorry, that was pretty rough. Teaching this course live is a whole lot easier than teaching on Zoom. I'm trying to get better. It did involve a quiz, but we'll figure out some other ways. Here's my suggestion to you.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, sorry, Rich, it's Alicia.
Yeah.
So my question is, what form would you include? Nick said that a lot of people are doing where they lease back their property for X amount of days so that they can find another house and be a cash buyer, as a seller. What form would you use for that?
So if I get your question correctly, your seller is going to sell the home and they're going to lease back the home they just sold until they find the home to purchase.
Correct.
Okay, so if you were to come in the documents section of the MLS, I know you're driving, but you're going to go under the forms. And if you just type in the word short-term, you're going to see a short-term leaseback agreement, and it's going to allow you to lease back the property for up to 60 days. And it'll talk about the rent and a few other things. So short-term leaseback agreement is what it's called.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
One thing I want to make sure you understand, yes, I'm the broker, but I'm here for you. So if you need to call me, you don't have to go up the natural ladder of calling Nick and calling any other staff members. If you want to talk to me, call me. That's okay. I'm really not, I don't try to be a scary person by any means, but I will be accessible for you if you want to discuss any contracts. So I can give you my phone number again if you'd like. I do have everybody that transfers over. I put you in my phone within a week. So I probably have all your phone numbers in any of you that are already here at the brokerage. And so that way I know to pick up because it's one of my agents. My phone number once again is 801-809-7983. If I don't get back to you within the hour, just call me again. Sometimes I can't pick up my phone, but usually I will respond in a text or something if I can. But so, all right. Well, we got done 3 minutes early. I'll let those of you that are driving to the office for the lunch come on and make your way, and we'll talk to you guys later.
Thank you.
Okay.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Thanks, Rich.
Thank you very much, Rich.
Thank you.